Today I am joined by my good friend Shauna Arnott, and today we're going to be talking about taking risks in life and in business. If you're a woman who's on a path of healing and transformation, it's time to live your heart out. My name is Nancy Ma, and I'm a physiotherapist, a family woman, and a dreamer just like you. Join me each week as I share a way of living where you'll feel more alive, vibrant, and free. Shauna, thank you so much for coming on extremely short notice.
My pleasure.
I literally just asked her to come 2 hours ago. So thank you for coming. So first I want to start by just sharing how much admiration I have for Shauna. So Shauna is someone I just met only a few years ago, actually. She is someone who is the super connector. She knows everybody and she has great connections, not just because she's super fun to be with, but because she just has such a genuine heart and she cares so much about other people. And I think people just really love being around her. So, Shauna is someone I deeply respect and admire for just your ability to take risks, put yourself out there. And you have such an incredible life. I was sharing this with you the other day of just, you have the life I think that so many people dream of and would never dare to take the chances that you've taken. And this is why you're here today. We're going to be talking about taking risks, but you've put yourself out there, you've taken some risks. I think you've won a few battles. You might have lost a couple of battles, and you're just out there being an amazing role model for other women, but also for your son and for entrepreneurs. So Shauna, we met her. Well, Brian and I, my husband, met her because of an event that she was running called Haste Hustle, and she is known. She is infamous in our neck of the woods for being the person that brought Gary Vee to this kind of small town. And you were just such an inspiration for us to think, wow, we're in the small town of Grimsby. Shauna, she's from Grimsby too. So you're amazing. Thank you for being here.
It's it's quite it's quite hard for me to sit and listen to that. It's like really nice for you to say all those things, and I deeply appreciate it. It's also very funny to sit and listen to someone just fawn.
Yes,
but thank you.
Yes, I was fawning. I'm a super fan. I am. And I was intimidated before I met you because of the status.
Right.
And to be honest, when I used to hear of women who were so successful, I'd have this sort of, intimidation that, oh, what if I meet her and she's a bitch or she's condescending or she just looks at what I've done and whatever. And you couldn't have been so far from that truth. I don't think I even told you that. I was intimidated by just the presence of Miss Shauna Arnott. And you just always have been so kind, and it's been great to get to know you as a friend. And
well, thank you for all of that. Again, it is a very honestly almost uncomfortable experience, but I appreciate all those nice things. And I think it's great to hear for me to know that you were intimidated, and then I broke that barrier broke down that idea, because that's what I want. I don't want to be intimidating. I don't want to be unapproachable. I don't want to be someone that people don't feel that they can come to, or unkind, or any of those things. I want to be the opposite. So I wanted to address the risks that I've taken, because certainly risks in my life have moved me forward and advanced my career in so many ways in my life, and I'm really proud of being a risk taker. I've also hurt people along the way, and have been challenged through and I've been put myself into significant challenge through those risks. So I want to address that there is two sides to it, and it's hard to talk about the harder side of things. It is hard to address and identify and recognize, and I do recognize that I see the whole picture all the time. I see that the risk has been fundamentally worthwhile. It's also been there's lots of pieces of it that I'm like, oh, I wish I could have done it differently. But I think that's inherent in what risk is you're taking an action without fully understanding the implications.
Yes.
Because
For
I
sure.
think if I fully had understood all the implications of the risks I was taking, I probably wouldn't have taken them, because I don't want to hurt anybody, and I don't want to like put myself into significant stress or challenge
Sure.
all the time. But I have done that, and yet on the other side of the coin, the outcome in so many ways has been incredible, and so
Sure.
it is on a macro level has been worth it.
Can we break down, like, what would you say would be the biggest risk you've taken in business?
Well, I think just like going on my own to produce Haste and Hustle
Yeah.
at a time when I didn't have any money to do it. When I booked Gary, I didn't even have a website. I don't even know if we had the name of the event yet. I think maybe we did. Yeah, we did.
Yep.
And I had just decided to become an event producer because I thought, oh, I'm an event planner.
Right.
I can be an event producer. No, that's not true. If you're an event planner and you think you can become an event producer, think twice. It's much harder than you realize. And so I just sort of went forward with this blind, sense of, I don't know.
So it's not something you were planning for years.
No, it happened overnight. It happened on Super Bowl Sunday of 2016.
Okay.
And Gary Vaynerchuk had responded to a Instagram comment that I'd made. Just like thanked me, or I can't remember what he said. Oh yeah, it was in response to a comment I'd made about the hotel they were staying at, because I recognized it in his video.
Okay.
And I had just booked it for a client of mine. And it was a nothing comment, but in my mind it was immediately like the walls just kind of came crumbling down on my whole idea that I wanted to create something meaningful for the Niagara region. And all of a sudden I was like, Gary's the guy, because we had been looking at like doing an event where we brought in musicians or entertainers or whatever. But then all of a sudden I was like, Gary's the guy. We don't need to have another entertainment event. We already have lots of those in Niagara. So let's have a business event so people from Toronto and Buffalo and everywhere else can come here and see what a great place it is to do business, but also live.
Right.
Because I think that was a challenge we were facing at the time, is that you can go and live in Toronto or go and work in Toronto, but it's kind of hard to live there because of the cost of living. Whereas, and the beauty here and the cost of living was so great, and it's still so accessible to major markets, right? So I was like, let's do that. And then immediately in that moment, I was like, he's the guy, I got to bring him here. I stayed up all night that night writing the whole plan for the event. And I reached out to his agent the following week. And I had him booked, that was at the beginning of February, and I had him booked by the end of February.
Wow. So the risk at that time, would you say you even calculated the risk?
No calculation.
Okay.
No, like, it was like a blind, like, I'm just going to do this. Of course it's going to be successful. How could it not? I got Gary Vee. I've got, this opportunity that's not been done yet, all these things. And I think that I put too much weight and emphasis on other things as opposed to on myself.
Okay.
And, I've got a great team. I've got all these things in place. And the thing that I failed to recognize is how much I had to grow in order to become what I was trying to become. Because to be honest with you, I didn't even know what I was trying to become. I thought I was still just being an event planner. And I can plan an event, but when you're planning an event for a company, it's so much easier because you just have the
You're
budget.
behind the scenes.
Yeah, when you have a budget, they give you the money, you pay for things, and you can do it. Whereas when you're producing an event, you're structuring the timeline in a way to manage the expenses. And when you haven't got the income coming in,
right?
It's
it's a big investment,
and it's a whole thing.
So what fueled you? Like you weren't even calculating the risk. I mean, it happened literally almost overnight. It's so quick. So what do you think in that moment fueled you to just push for this crazy thing?
I don't know. I think blind stupidity. I don't know. I'm kidding. But I think for me, I always just wanted to make a mark. And I always knew that...
It's your big heart. That's I think.
Okay.
It's you wanting to care about Niagara and putting us on the map and saying, hey, there's so much beauty here.
Yeah.
because most entrepreneurs don't think like that. They do, well, you would know, but we think about dollars and all that stuff, if it makes sense, and you're thinking about that stuff, and that passion drove you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I always say that I'm a humanitarian first and a business person second.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%. About you, yes.
Thank you. So, I mean, I think part of it is that I tried to, yes, I was trying to make an impact socially, and I was trying to do something good for this area and for the business community here. I didn't have the connections at the time or the wherewithal to bring everyone together the way I wanted. I think, it was just, there was so many things that happened that could have been done better, but it's the first time we were doing it.
Sure.
And so that was really probably the biggest risk I ever took.
So at what point did you realize it was a risk now? Because at first you didn't think about it. So when were you like, oh, shit, this is happening?
Way too late. Probably the end of November of that year. And the event was the following February.
Okay, so 3 months left to go. Three quarters of the way through. Okay.
Yeah, that's when I was like, oh my gosh. I remember that it was in November when I realized this wasn't an event planning role. This is an event producing role, and they were drastically different. And I don't know why I hadn't identified that sooner. I think that I just get excited and I move and I just do, and I fail to look at all the things. But so that was when I noticed it. And then, although I think I did think about it maybe back in the late summer, September as well, because I remember asking Gary on his show.
Oh yeah, you were on his show.
Well, it was like a call in at this point.
Yeah.
Asking him on the show about risk. I asked him how much risk is too much risk, and his answer basically indicated that I had taken on too much risk.
What was it? What was what was his answer?
He answered as long as you're not putting your family at risk.
Okay.
Then you're fine. And I'd put my family, not at risk, I mean, no one was getting hurt, but
right.
I'd put people in a position where they were helping financially and otherwise, right?
Okay.
So that's where, I mean, I feel like I just ran over the line of risk. But at that point, I still felt that I couldn't walk it back, or I didn't have the wherewithal to know how to restructure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can we backtrack and talk about, because you mentioned a couple of times that you've hurt people along the way. Mm-hmm. And I just want to clarify that, because from our conversation even the other day, I think you hurting people, it sounds like, oh yeah, people got injured almost, but that's obviously not the case. So what do you mean by that? So is it related to the risk you took in this endeavor?
Yeah, there's certainly that. I mean, people who contributed financially and with their time that, had different expectations of the outcome, as I did as well.
Right.
And, there's certainly some hurt there. And then even in the subsequent years, when we've had to reschedule it due to the pandemic, just some of the ways we've had to, lean it, kind of operate in a very lean way, or, hold tickets or different things like that, that creates, I don't know if hurt is the right word.
It's not. I don't think it is.
Yeah, so maybe
you've disappointed people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Hurt seems like
any time I've ever disappointed a person, I've probably felt that disappointment on
tenfold.
Myself.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that's the thing about taking these chances. So if we go by what Gary Vee says as what's too far, in that you're disappointing your family, that's also arguable. But in this case, when you disappoint other people, and we talked about this the other day, it's their expectations of you and expectations of the outcome that you also clearly have no control over.
Yeah.
Right? And it's upon each individual, whether they're investing or taking risks or helping out a family member or friend, that they understand that is also a risk.
Yeah.
Right? And you're doing it together, especially if you're family or friends, that, when the outcome isn't what you expect, it's affecting everybody. It's not like you're taking that money and then you took all the profits and you screwed everybody over, because that's what hurting people would do.
Exactly.
But disappointing people, it's like, okay, well, the outcome isn't what was expected, but it's a risk for everybody, right? And I think that that is what stops a lot of people, because they don't want to disappoint others, right? Even, even on a smaller scale. I mean, what you did was really on a big scale, but even on a smaller scale, if you want to quit your job, that's a risk. And what if you're disappointing your family? What if they're counting on you for this or that or whatever? And so people really put that, I think too high on the priority list, and that's what stops people from going forward and taking risks.
Oh, I agree. I mean, we're all scared of something, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and if we have a heart, then we are fearful of hurting others or disappointing others or putting, friends and family or colleagues at risk in any way. And, it's funny. I actually just came from a meeting this morning with my business partners where we were talking about risk to each other, and how do we protect each other, and how do we have equal risk, and all this sorts of things. And it was interesting to me because I think that inevitably there's always risk, and of course none of us want to put each other in a position where that risk is going to be realized.
Right.
But I think that what I sort of discovered this morning and in recent months is having really open conversations from the get-go of, this is exactly where we're at, this is what we're willing to do, these are our expectations, and just being very, very transparent. And I think that is a lost or never developed part of business. We are always so private, and we have to keep things so boxed and segmented, and
you only talk about the positive and the growth, and you don't look at
That's right. But like in a business setting, I think the real way to move forward in a business, especially with partners and colleagues, is to be very open and honest about things, and have just real conversation and real truthful conversation.
Yeah.
Not this sort of like, oh yeah,
fluffy,
fine, and fluff.
Yeah.
And I kind of got chewed up by corporate America a couple times, and that's a really hard experience. And what I identified in those situations is the real lack of open communication.
Right.
It's this whole like everything is fine until all of a sudden it's not, and then everyone's getting hurt or disappointed.
Yeah.
And so I think the constant communication and just being open, and I think that's where I try to have changed in my life because of how I've operated in the past, is just like, let's just put all of our cards on the table.
Yeah, because you're afraid that what if they know this thing, and they're worried that it's not going to work out. But I think people trust more when they know like all of it, when they know the full story.
Absolutely.
And even I can relate this in our relationship with my husband, is that when we take a risk and we're investing in something and we talk about it, one of the things that helps us decide is, are we going to be okay if this fails? Is this going to affect our health? Is this going to affect our family? Is this, and as long as we know that we're still going to be healthy, our limbs are going to stay intact, we're still going to have love and our family, then we're good with taking risks, because we know that all that other stuff is just stuff, right? And but people are so afraid of like going to zero. But zero is also where we grow from. This is where we learn. Right?
Well, let me tell you, I went to zero a couple of times. And
tell us about that. Just one time. You don't have to go into private details, but like what did that look like for you?
It looked very dark. Like it I always say to everyone, it felt like I woke up every day with a massive rock on my chest that I had to like push aside and then exert energy all day long to hold it in place.
That's very graphic.
While I tried to then fix the situation. And that's what it felt like. And so it's exhausting.
I can really feel that with that image.
Good.
Yeah.
Because that's what
yeah.
And it was, it was almost just like, what do I do? Like, how do I figure this out? How do I get out of this? Just constantly sad and upset and scared. And I'll tell you, I still feel fearful about that about those experiences sometimes.
Sure.
Like the fear will still creep back in. Like,
Yes.
And yeah, like it was probably those are some of the worst times of my life.
Yeah.
Easily. And yet I still had my teenage son to look after and my life to live.
Sure.
And that was not fun.
Yeah, and I think, as risk takers, we know, at least now, after we've taken the risk, is that we can get to zero.
Yeah.
We can get to that point where we hit rock bottom, and then there's this fog and this heaviness, and there's that fear, and it's not like you take that leap of faith and the fear just goes away.
Yeah.
It always does creep back in. And we always still have to face it. It's like this constant teacher.
Yeah.
To me, it's a spiritual teacher. It'll come back and say, how much do you want this? How much do you want to get out of bed even? How much do you want to keep doing what you're doing? But the beauty of it is we can also get up from zero too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those days, I don't think you're in those darkest parts. Last time I spoke to you, you're super excited about what's ahead of you. You have a clear path. So, you can hit that bottom, but we definitely can and do grow from it, especially when there are other people depending on us. When you have a family, when you're running a business, there's still people who depend on you, and you can't be in that dark place forever.
Yeah.
So how did you get out of that funk?
It took a little bit. I mean, part of it was, first of all, you really learn very quickly who your true friends are, and who really supports you and loves you.
Yeah.
It's people easily just like run for the hills,
Right.
and that's reality. The people who did stick by me were the ones that really helped me get through it, because they inspired me to keep going.
Yeah.
And so what I decided to do right off the bat, I remember it was, very I would say in the two main situations that I'm like referring to in my head, they both happened very quickly and then resolved quite quickly too.
What happened and resolved quickly?
So like
The actual funk?
The impact of what I had done that kind of resulted in like a really like me going to zero.
So let's actually describe what zero. To me, when I say zero, I mean you've kind of hit rock bottom. You feel like you failed at something. Kind of sucky. You're in a position you weren't planning for and didn't want to be in. Is that what you would say?
Oh yeah, and in deep debt.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not just zero. You're negative.
Oh, like I was way negative.
Okay.
Like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and and that's brutal. Because like I said, it's like a huge weight.
Okay, sorry. Can we clarify? Are you hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, or the business was?
The business, but a lot of it was. Yeah, and this is where you'll probably catch me. But like the thing is that a lot of the support that we had received was from friends and family, and I felt very committed to that return.
Yeah.
Personally, even though as a business it could have been wiped.
Right.
In like whatever. But
right.
I still feel committed to those things. And I think it's important to never forget who's helped you.
Sure. And you're not. And it sounds like you're close to paying that off.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there is that dark side. You said it was temporary. It obviously was temporary.
Yeah.
You knew who your true friends are, and you got out of it pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and how I got out of it, just to kind of circle back, is that I started to just do things that made me feel good. Because I was feeling so awful about myself, and I was being so hard on myself. I do internally
internalize it. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
And so what I started doing is writing emails and notes to people, just to tell them how much I loved and appreciated them, and to like share a story about how they'd impacted my life. And these were not people necessarily in business. Like these were like my mom's friends.
Aww.
These were like people I'd known from high school. Some of them were business,
right?
But I didn't want there to be a business outcome necessarily attached. I just was like, because I was like, that's
You just wanted to go back to
I
giving.
just wanted to go back to giving, like on the purest level. And so that's what I did. I started doing that every day. I did 5 a day.
Amazing.
And it was so meaningful. Like it just immediately would turn my energy around.
Yes.
And then I was like, okay, now I can go forward and, deal with all the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's really how I started to turn the ball around. And then honestly, like I just every day got up and took action. Every single day.
Yes.
Okay, let me say, probably not every single day because there's probably some days when I was just
Okay,
like,
most days, 5 out of 7 days.
For sure, like the bulk.
Yeah.
And I would get up and I would take action to like recover the loss, but also reconcile the what I'd done. And so, like in the first instance, which is the first Haste Hustle, like we had reconciled that within a year.
Amazing.
And so that's like remarkable in a lot of ways. And it was just like daily action. Like I woke up the day after the first one realizing we'd hit this rock bottom, and I like emailed people and started the ball rolling one more time.
Yeah.
And so, I've talked about this before, and I always share that quote from Winston Churchill where he says, if you're going through hell, just keep walking.
Oh.
Or just keep going.
Yeah.
Because like there is another side. Like you won't stay there. And I think that is when you truly do fail, is when you just give up completely.
Or you don't even try to begin with.
That's right.
And so when you talk about that funk of, that heaviness, and you're trying to lift this obstacle off you, I work with so many people who feel that because they didn't even try. They didn't even do the things that they wanted to. Not even close. So they're living like this. Like you hit rock bottom and you came back out of it. But there are some who never take any risks and they live like that.
Right.
And to me, that's like kind of that what Winston Churchill said is like, you if you stay there, that's your responsibility.
Yeah. Right?
Like it's the growth happens when you're making your way back up. And knowing you, I and this is part of the reason I admire you and your life is that you've done so many incredible things, and you have such a beautiful lived experience. And the places you've gone to, the people you've seen and met. Can you share like one of the best trips? I know you take a billion trips all the time, but I mean, you are also a small town girl at heart, but you also are this huge world traveler and have done amazing things. And, when people, especially women, they don't take that risk, and not necessarily in business, but in life, they stay in that funk for a long time and sometimes forever. So why would it be worth it to take the risk? Tell me about some experiences that are amazing, that are, we know there's zero. So tell us about a couple or one amazing experience that to you was worth it, worth the risk. In hindsight, you've lived, you've learned, you've grown, and you keep going. You have other business projects coming up. You're starting new businesses all the time. You're doing new things all the time. Those zeros didn't stop you, didn't hold you back. So, yeah.
So that's a loaded question. But I think for me, I don't really regret any of it. I mean, other than any time someone was upset. But I all of it has, created this life. Like even going through the hardship, when I look back on it now, I'm like, man, if I didn't go through that experience, I wouldn't have, like if I didn't go through that first Haste and Hustle, I wouldn't have had the second one. Right. Because just all these things that
of course.
led to the second one, and then the third, and then those experiences have all culminated to lead to other things that I've done. So I've managed to build relationships all over the world because people know me and my event and different things. And so ultimately, even in like a failure, or go to zero, it's still a success. It's just a lost leader, if that's how you want to put it, right? Like we basically, it was just like a branding exercise. Yeah. And so, I mean, but ultimately it's good. So, I mean, I do travel all over the place, and I love the experience of travel and taking the risk even just to do that. And I think the kick is to travel alone sometimes.
Yeah. But I was going to say, tell us about, because you shared that memory as one of the best memories of your life with the Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I was in Antarctica. It was. I'll just quickly backtrack on that for 1 second. I had never been on a cruise in my life because I'm scared of open water.
Okay.
And my friend phoned me and she's like, "Do you want to come on an Antarctic cruise on a small ship across the Drake Passage, which is 2 days over the roughest open water in the world?"
Oh my goodness.
To
Go big or go home.
So I was like, okay. And I'm not kidding you, I was quite terrified at first.
But you took the risk.
I took the risk. And this is, how risk works, is that once you do it and you succeed and you get back, the experience is so much bigger and better than we expected.
Yes.
And it's
Thank you
not
for saying that.
nearly as scary as you think.
Yes.
It never is.
Never.
Anytime I've ever taken a risk, it's never compared to what I thought.
Yeah. The demons are always worse when they're
Way worse.
hiding in the closet, for sure.
Oh, yes. That's
Yeah.
so true. So I went across the Drake Passage. I went blind for 24 hours because of the Dramamine patch that they gave me.
Oh, okay.
And then they took it off and I got my sight restored. And I was in Antarctica. And one of the things that we did there, which was the best experience ever, was they had us do a polar plunge into the ocean. So you just wear a swimsuit, nothing else, and they sort of tie this rope with a life preserver around you, and you jump in, and there's icebergs floating by and glaciers on the land, and there you are. And so I jump in, and then I jokingly decided to start swimming away from the boat, and then they started pulling me back in. And I'm climbing up the ladder, and then an orca whale surfaced about 10 to 20 feet away.
Wow.
And it was almost just like healing or something.
Oh.
I can't even describe it. I mean,
Yes.
it was such an incredible experience that I had never had, obviously, anything like that happen in my entire life, but it was just so beautiful. Now, I don't know whether that orca was dangerous or what. Hopefully I was out of the water at that point, but it was just, it was one of those almost like validating experiences.
It is. I mean, look at all the risks there. You already don't like open water. You're taking a 2-day cruise ship in the most open, rocky waters. Mm-hmm. And then you jump into the freaking cold ocean.
Yeah. -12.
Like all these risks, and you have one of the most incredible experiences and memories imprinted in your life. Like that sums up risk taking right there. Yeah. It's not all pretty in that. Yeah, it's still cold. Yeah, it's still scary.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there was nights like when we were crossing the Drake. Like we had to strap ourselves into bed. Like
oh gosh,
it was 30 foot swell, 30 foot 40. Like it was like. The water was easily hitting our window at the fourth floor, right? Like it was
fourth floor. Wow.
Yeah, so we were definitely, in a situation where I was like not comfortable.
Right.
But the experience was one of the most magical experiences of my life, and not because it was just Antarctica, but because I felt like I took a risk and did something way outside my comfort zone.
Yes.
And I walked out of that trip just a new person almost.
Amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that was last year.
Those experiences that shape who we are.
Yeah.
And I feel like when people don't take risks, and it doesn't have to be something so scary and like that, like even on a smaller level in your everyday life, but when you don't take these risks, I feel like we're hiding who we are, and we hide under this rock. And we think we want to be more comfortable, but it ends up being so uncomfortable to live in that space. And I'm so glad to have you share like the honest realities of when you take risks, is that it's not obviously all rainbows and sunshine. There are dark days, there are funks, but it's always worth it. Like, I don't think anybody who takes chances, well, maybe there's probably a couple people out there who do regret it, but for the most part, most people regret not taking risks. They get to the end of their life and they're like, I wish I traveled more. I wish I loved more. I wish I tried out that business or that job or went for it with that person or whatever. So
I totally agree. I read this book when my son was little, and it talked about how kids, boys especially, but kids need to get hurt sometimes. You need to let them go off and play in the forest and fall and ride their bikes. And
Was it "Oh, the Places You'll Go" by Dr. Seuss?
No,
Because I love that one. It talks about it there.
yeah, you're right. It does, and you're gonna get scrapes and you're gonna break. You might break a bone or you might whatever it looks like, but the recovery, the recovery period that kids go through, once they get through that, their self-esteem is so elevated because they know
Yes.
that they can recover.
Yes.
And then it actually emboldens them in life. And I think that that's almost like what taking risk does for adults.
Yes.
Because we take the risk, we go through it, we see the challenge, we overcome it, and we know that the reward is that we can now take on something even bigger. And we can get through it, and so it's almost like yay for our, yay me.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
It is a way to embolden and elevate your life, I think.
Yeah,
And
100%.
I don't know, risk. I mean, a risk sort of has almost a negative connotation to it, but ultimately, it's really just like exploring beyond your comfort zone.
It is.
Into a place that's the unknown, and that's why it's scary.
But it always pays off. It always pays off if you choose to let it. If you choose to let it pay off, then it always does.
Yeah, if you just like curl up and into a I don't know, puddle of misery, it's not going to work out for you. But the trick is to take the lesson, understand it, learn from it, grow from it, all those things.
Yeah.
But people sometimes, I guess they don't do that.
Yeah, for sure. In Dr. Seuss's book, it was one of my favorite ones, where he talks about the waiting place, and don't get stuck in the waiting place where people are just waiting for the truck to come or the train to go or the plane to pass or all these things, and they're waiting. They don't do anything. And the book's about going on adventures and learning, and yes, you're gonna fall, but it's always worth it in the end.
Oh yeah. Stagnation is really the biggest risk.
100%. Well, Shauna, this has been so fun, so lovely. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope that whoever's watching, whoever's listening, take this as inspiration. You're learning from one of the top women in this industry, for showing what it's like to take risks with love and to doing it with consciousness. I think, you can take risks without conscience and have a lot to lose there. But Shauna has such a big heart, and she's learned so much, grown so much, and inspires me and hopefully you. So take some risks and really live your heart out. So I'm going to share some links below if you want to contact Shauna for any event planning. She only does big gigs though. But so thank you for watching, and tune into the next episode. Until then, remember to live your heart out.